Sahar joins me again in the studio. Sahar, watching your report there, how would you characterise freedoms for women in Iran now, after all of these protests? Has anything changed for the better?
Nothing's changed. I mean, for decades, Iranian women have been second class. They don't have access to some of the most basic human rights. They have limited access to rights like inheritance, even travel, divorce, custody of children. They're not allowed to ride a bicycle in public. They're not allowed to go to stadiums where men are present. They have no protection against sexual violence or domestic violence. I mean, this is a regime that not only legalizes, but proudly promotes violence against women. And there is a famous saying that says, if you want to know about freedom in any country, look at the rights of the women of that country. And Iran is massively lacking in that front, and no one's even apologizing or trying to hide it. And these protests began by women fighting for their freedoms. And soon after, they were followed by men all over Iran, whether they're old, young, middle class, from working class, upper class. And this has become a huge nationwide movement because everybody in Iran is fed up.
But what about the status of the movement now? I mean, the world's media followed it intensely, didn't it, several months ago? There's been the crackdown, as you describe in your report there. What's the strength of the resistance movement now?
Yes, we're seeing less protests publicly out on the streets. Over 22,000 protesters were arrested. There were 4 public executions. People were given, hundreds of people were given death sentence, some of them children. It might be worth mentioning here that Iran is one of the last countries in the world where juvenile offenders can be executed. And the age of legal responsibility for girls is 9. And the age of legal responsibility for boys is 15. So like children were being put on death row. But now, because of the brutal crackdown, less people are out on the street, but the movement has very much moved underground. And all of these underground grassroots groups are uniting. They're trying to come up with a plan. They're trying to get training. They're trying to, because crackdown wasn't the only reason that the protests subsided. The lack of leadership and a plan of action was another issue, and they're now planning for the next spark so that they can be more organized, so that there would be less of a price to pay, and that all of these sacrifices would lead somewhere.
It's hard, though, isn't it, to organize when freedom of expression is so severely curtailed, and from my understanding as well, the government's been using technological methods to make those connections harder.
Yeah. It's important to remember that the Islamic Republic of Iran is a regime that was born out of a populist revolution. So the whole system is built in a way to make sure that they don't get overthrown in the same way.
Well, it has survived.
It has survived, indeed. And now, like you said, they have access to some very complex technology that allows them for them to survive even more. For example, as soon as the protests began, they blocked internet access, they blocked access to a lot of social media websites and platforms, which is the main way that the news came out of Iran. But then obviously tech-savvy Iranians found ways through VPNs to still get the message outside and show what's happening inside. And Iran has access to the Chinese facial recognition CCTVs, which makes them identify protesters. They have all of these things going on. And they also have some other very clever tactics. For example, the gas poisoning with the girls with the schoolgirls. I believe that was a way for them to distract the world from what was happening.
Which they deny, we should say.
Yeah, they deny that. I'm not saying it was them. But then there's been all of these different things that kind of distracts from what's happening on the streets. For example, shortly after the protest began, they allegedly got rid of the so-called morality police in Iran. And whilst everybody was like, oh, Iran is getting rid of the morality police, they did the 4 executions. Or, they are basically trying to distract the world from what the people want. People don't want them. But the regime is denying that, and they're doing everything in their power to distract the world. And it's our job on the outside to make sure that we stay informed and engaged, to make sure that those people in Iran know that we see them, that we hear them, that even though we don't hear their voice, we become their voice.
Okay. Zahar, very interesting talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.